Good morning, Bergen County! I'm your host, Allison Peoples, along with my co-hosts, Amanda Weiss.
Good morning.
And DJ Jazzy J.
Hey there.
As the weather is heating up, the clothes are coming off. Many schools are questioning the appropriateness of student dress. But with school ending in a few days, is the dress code worth enforcing? This morning on 177.6, we're calling in educational experts, as well as some students from Northern Highlands Regional High School in Allendale, New Jersey, about this to talk about this policy. Before getting into the interviews, Amanda, why don't you explain a little bit about our segment today?
Thanks, Allison. With the summer fast approaching, high school students are beginning to dress for the weather, causing some problems with their provocative apparel. Our topic of discussion this week comes from Jane Smith of Upper Saddle River. How does the Northern Highlands Regional High School deal with the problem today, and was it an issue of the past?
We have student coordinator Kathy Barbarian here to talk about why Highlands has a dress code. Hi, Ms. Barbarian. So glad to have you with us here today. Let's begin with an easy question. Why do we have a dress code?
I guess to keep from offending others with, certain clothing choices, whether it's a lack of clothes, small clothes, or things that say things that might offend other people.
Do you think the dress code is enforced?
No, I mean, it's not always. I mean, honestly, I think if I had to enforce it 100% the way it's written and the way it's supposed to be, I would do nothing else.
We have junior Kendall Connolly on the other line. Kendall, what have your experiences been with the dress code enforcement?
I've barely seen anyone ever get caught for a dress code violation except for my first day at Highlands when I was in gym class and one student was wearing a shirt up very high so her whole stomach was exposed and she got caught. So that was the only experience I've ever had, but I have seen a couple of other students get caught for high tops, but that's really it. But otherwise than that, I feel like most people abide and just kind of dress conservative anyway.
Very interesting. Thanks, Kendall. We also have Principal Joseph Ochino here. Mr. Ochino, as an administrator, how do you approach dress code enforcement?
People already violate our dress code, and we sometimes turn our eyes the other way. Sometimes we feel it could be a losing battle. Sometimes, as a male, I don't necessarily I did have one year in my career where I actually went up to a girl and said, "You have to put something on." The girl said to me, "Why are you looking?" I said, "Because I was the assistant principal." I said, "Because I'm the assistant principal, and it's my job to make sure that people adhere to our dress code, and clearly you're not."
Did that go any further? She didn't respond?
No.
Thank you so much. It appears that the faculty of Northern Highlands perceive the dress code to be a necessity, though it is not enforced. The students, however, do not feel it is a necessity, and they agree that it is not enforced. Before we speak with our next guest, we will take a quick commercial break. Coming up next, Clothing Throughout the Decades, a segment on how fashion has changed during the past 50 years in Northern Highlands.
Sale at Bikinis R Us. With prom season ending and summer fast approaching, it is perfect timing to invest in new bathing suits. Our hottest summer 2014 line is the Less is More collection of suits and tops that, while they don't cover much, manage to get the point across. Stop in and get 15% off our school collection today. Mention 177.6 radio and get another 10% off on purchases of $50 or more.
As the temperature increases, so does your risk for skin cancer. How do you protect against the harmful rays of the sun while still looking good? Visit the Cover Up Club on Route 1984 for a wide selection of long dresses, skirts, and long-sleeve shirts. We've got clothing in all colors, styles, and materials. Popular this week is the turtleneck in our sun-free collection for those with sensitive skin. Come by tomorrow through July 1st to get a discount on our no-show bathing suits.
Welcome back to 177.6 Radio. My name is Amanda Weiss, and I'm your host for today's Dress Through the Ages segment with Allison Peoples and DJ Jazzy J. We've just spoken with Ms. Kathy Barbarian, Kendall Connolly, and Principal Ochino about the need for a dress code in school and its enforcement. In our conversation with Ms. Barbarian and Principal Ochino, it is apparent that clothing has changed over time since their days in high school. Let's hear from Ms. Elizabeth Zushma, a chemistry teacher, on her opinion of students' clothing of today.
But it's supposed to be to keep people appropriate, so there's no vulgarity and there's no body parts.
Do we still need a dress code?
Yes. Because you guys obviously don't know how to dress. Not you guys, but people in general obviously don't know how to dress, because yesterday I had some crazy things going on in here. And it wasn't even hot yesterday, so I don't understand.
Would you care to elaborate on the crazy thing?
I had a child wearing a wife beater. I don't know the real name for it, but not appropriate. I should not see like your entire chest essentially as a man. And I had girls with their butt cheeks hanging out. And so far the chest hasn't hung out. It's just been the butt cheeks, but not appropriate. And it was only 70 degrees yesterday, so I don't quite understand. I do get it a little bit when it's like 100, but like it was only 70 degrees yesterday. I don't understand.
Thank you. In sharp contrast to the clothes worn today, the clothing of the first few decades of Highlands history was much more conservative. The 1960s was an era characterized by tumultuous events, including the assassinations of Martin Luther King Jr. and John F. Kennedy, as well as the British invasion and the Vietnam War. According to a Fling article from 1965, It's a Girl's World, Karen Hopkins reported that the classic A-line skirts are navy blue, burgundy, and olive green. The poor baby sweater shirts are making the scene, along with the total look. The newest fad is the granny dress, but by the dress code at our school prohibits wearing this to class. Mr. Bruce Emra, English supervisor, has been an integral part of the Northern Highlands community since 1968. Mr. Emra, have there been any major changes in dress code since you've been at Highlands?
First of all, I think you need to know the school opened in the fall of '65, so it's almost, well, we'll be heading into its 50th year. I came the third year of the school. Now, the interesting thing then, I think, was relating to girls. Girls could not wear pants, jeans, whatever you want to call them, corduroys. I mean, that sounds really weird, but it was 48, 49 years ago. So girls always had to wear skirts, or they probably wore skirts and sweaters, something like that.
That's funny you mention that, Mr. Emra. We have an opinion piece from the Highlands Fling in the late 60s titled, "Slacks are Grotesque and Unladylike." Let's read an excerpt. After several requests from the female student body, it was decided by the administration and student council that slacks could be worn to school on cold days, at the student's discretion. Now that this has been in effect for several weeks, many of the male student body have either changed or reaffirmed their opinions that slacks have no place in school. When asked how they felt about girls wearing slacks to school, many said they would much rather look at legs than just ankle bones. Others shared the opinions that slacks were okay, depending upon who was wearing them. Several rather vehement juniors made the profound statement that they never knew there were so many fat girls and large derrieres in the school until the girls started wearing pants.
Wow, DJ Jazzy J, that's eye-opening. Moving on from the 60s, let's talk about the 70s.
By the 1970s, the hippie culture had faded. The era was characterized by an opposition to the Vietnam War, nuclear weapons, government, and big business. People advocated for world peace, and the environmentalist movement started. Fashion of the 1970s included polyester and bright colors for both men and women. Tight pants and platform shoes were all the rave. Leisure suits, tracksuits, and pantsuits were common, as well as tunics and robes. It was the first decade in which women could be seen wearing pants in all aspects of life.
Mr. Ochino, can you please speak about the trends of the 70s?
Because when I was in high school, I can't remember a dress code, and that was a long time ago. It was back, I graduated in 1979, so, from the late 70s.
Right.
I do not remember a dress code at all. And I don't know necessarily, first of all, the style of clothing was much different, okay? So we didn't have, they didn't sell the type of clothing, obviously, they sell now. A little bit more revealing now, okay? So I think it was a little easier for us just to naturally have a dress code because that's all you were able to wear, okay? Well, here, see, like a perfect example, if you looked at pictures of athletes back in the 70s, even basketball players, professional ball players, they used to wear their socks all the way up to their knees, okay? And the shorts were, you couldn't make them any shorter, okay? Seriously, if you looked at old pictures of like Wilt Chamberlain or someone, even, like if I broke out my high school yearbook, you would be absolutely surprised. They were really short. So there was nothing that you couldn't say to people, well, right now, if they were that short, I would probably tell a male student, I said, you can't wear that, okay? And so that wasn't the issue was it's almost like, it's, I guess, very similar than if you want to say what they sold now is what they sold then is what you wore, and I guess on the flip side, people are doing the same thing now. That's what they sell now, that's what we wear.
The 1980s brought the Cold War to the end with the falling of the Berlin Wall in 1989. Fashion of the 80s consisted of neon colors, blocky shapes, velour, velvet fabric, and high waistlines. Teased hair and loud makeup, skin-tight cotton stirrup pants, leggings, turtleneck sweaters, and parachute pants were all popular as well.
Ms. Barbarian, could you elaborate on what kids wore to school in the 80s?
I was in high school in the 80s. And, like, honestly, there wasn't, I mean, you had big hair. And maybe the midriff a little bit, but it was pretty contained. Like, I mean, I feel like it wasn't a big issue. I can't remember it. I certainly was not, revealing too much. But, like, I don't remember. Or, you know what? Here's what I think a little bit of it is, now that I'm thinking of this. I think also, kids were kids a little bit more back then. Do you know what I'm saying? We weren't. Yeah. You guys are exposed to so much so much earlier than we were, and we didn't. Of course we all kind of wanted to be adults, but we didn't necessarily dress. And not that you guys are dressing like adults, but we dressed sort of like our age a little bit more because the fashions weren't so much exposed to us. If that, you know what I'm saying? Like I remember I had a friend that would go into the city with her dad would was I don't know, whatever. They'd go in the city and she would get like very cool, trendy clothing. But the rest of us were like at Macy's. Not even. I was at the outlets buying whatever was there, and there wasn't that much like there that was too overly trendy and cool.
The 1990s brought turmoil in the Middle East, with the United States getting involved in Iraq with Operation Desert Storm. Grunge was born in Seattle, and the movement played a prominent role in not only fashion, but also music. Gangsta rap was born, and many young teens sported gangsta clothes. Sports became more popular than ever, and cheesy sitcoms filled the screens of televisions nationwide. Fashion in the 90s included Air Jordans, baggy t-shirts, baseball caps, and mullets. Grunge made flannel, hoe-ridden jeans, and long hair popular for both men and women. Urban styles of dress were prominent everywhere, not just in urban areas. Camouflage was ubiquitous, and styles of the 90s still persist today into.
Now let's speak with physics teacher Mr. Michael Manzella about fashion of the 90s.
From when I started, you have to understand, when I was in high school 15 years ago, every generation there's this different like trendy what clothes you wear. And when I was in high school, the girls were like, the thing was like flannels and like it was baggy. It was the No Doubt generation, Gwen Stefani, like baggy jeans. It was much different then than what it is now. And I guess because it wasn't revealing or provocative, there wasn't really a need for a dress code.
The 2000s were characterized by continual unrest in the Middle East with the Iraq and Afghanistan War. It was also plagued by various global calamities and panics such as Y2K, 9/11, the Great Recession, and turmoil in the Middle East. Fashion in the 2000s was a fusion of past styles and various culture. Globalization influenced fashion, bringing Middle Eastern and Asian dress into mainstream culture. Eco-friendly clothing was also popular, such as fake fur and recycled clothes.
Now we have science teacher John Beatty here with us to discuss fashion of the early 2000s.
Well, for me, when I was younger, I spent kindergarten through 8th grade in a Catholic school, so it was nice and easy. I had a uniform every day, and we never had to worry about it. When I got to high school, the dress code existed, and back then, I would say, honestly, not as many people pushed and kind of bended the rules as much because it just didn't make sense. There was no really need to. And I think the other thing that is really contradictory is the fashion sense has changed, where a lot of the apparel makers now are making clothes that are more of a see-through material and skirts that are shorter than they used to be. And that's kind of like the new norm of what you can buy when you're out, that it's actually harder to find clothes that would be appropriate for school than it is to find clothes that are inappropriate. I think that what's considered attractive has definitely changed, and I would say that the clothing industry is a driving effort of that their clothes that they put on their like supermodel models basically for their advertisements, I think it's definitely pushing students to want to look like that rather than kind of just dress and be themselves. That if that's what they're going to see everywhere and then that's the only thing you can buy in the store, that's what you're going to try to push yourself to look like.
What relationship do you think clothing has with self-esteem?
I personally think that the new style of clothing negatively impacts self-esteem because a lot of people are concerned with how they are going to look in the clothing, and that if they don't have it, then they're going to be kind of like, oh, why are you wearing that when everybody else is wearing something else? And I would honestly say that nowadays there's more people in this school than I've ever seen when I was in school wearing dresses and skirts and everything else. And I think it's just like the new norm. And I think that the people that can't or that don't wear those start to get the negative impact from others of wondering why they're not wearing it.
That's really interesting considering about 50 years ago, like we heard in the fling and from Mr. Emra, dresses and skirts were actually considered the norm.
They're not wearing it. And I also think because everything is so revealing, those that aren't 100% comfortable with their body types are going to be concerned. It's going to be concerning for them because not only is there nothing else for them to really buy, so now they're forced to buy that, and then that's what they have to wear.
As a part of this technological age, how have you seen social media influence the way people dress?
I would say social media. I mean, there's so many things nowadays that people are on. There's Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. I mean, you name it, people have started to join it. And I think that that whole freedom of expression still exists, but I think that there are so many people out there that are now pushing one lifestyle or one thing. And for instance, I know like on Instagram, it's all of like the fit athletes and like the girls in bikinis and like everybody's following those pages, you know? And it's basically that is definitely not going in the right direction because then everybody who is following them thinks that that's what the norm should be or that's what their girl should look like someday, when in reality it's not going to happen.
Also, like in addition to social media, pop culture is pretty pervasive in the lives and influential in the lives of students. We have Junior Mike Florio here on the line too. Mike, what do you think about this?
I mean, it's like pop culture. It's what we see in the movies. I mean, come on. I mean, you know, you see like on Sports Illustrated magazines, and you just like they set the standard of what should be worn, and now it's like shorter shorts and tighter shirts, and because of that, that gets reflected.
Do you think there's more implications because that's the new norm? There's more pressure, like affects self-esteem and whatnot.
Oh yeah, I mean, no doubt. I mean, you see it all the time now. Like the question of like what it means to be like, you know, popular and perfect, and now, you know, we see it more than ever, it being, you know, having the perfect body and you know, wearing the perfect clothes that, like, you know, accentuate all of your perfect body, you know, assets. But I think it's ridiculous.
Both social media and pop culture affect how students at Highlands dress today, as well as how they did in the past. Mr. Ochino, with all that said, would a uniform be an appropriate solution to the dress code violation issues of today?
Every time I see a school that does it, I mean, a lot of schools here's the reasons why it's different in our area than other schools. Some of your urban districts definitely they put uniforms in, and that's less to do with the types of clothing people are wearing, or the revealing clothing, where that's our issue, and more to do with gang.
We never really thought of it that like the clothing students wear could be a danger to them. Mr. Manzella, is there any way that the clothing we do wear could be
Educators at Promise Catholic High School who were arrested for sleeping with student body. Went away on a summer field trip to, I believe it was Germany. And again, not saying that has anything to do with what they wear, but I know sometimes when we go out and I'm with Jess, and I'll be like, or I'll say, just how old do you think she is? And you can't tell because of, you know, how provocative a lady dresses these days. And it's scary from a parent, it's scary for a teacher's perspective. And I think that's the thing, you know, like it is very provocative.
That's a really different perspective. Do you think that clothing can be disruptive in the classroom as well?
I don't know what the decision-making process was for our dress code. I just think for the nature of, you know, the human anatomy, obviously you're going to have different reasons to protect and have probably more stricter guidelines for a female's body than a male's body. You know, no one's looking at, what's your first name? Jake. Jake. Nice to meet you, Jake. No one's looking at Jake's, when Jake wears the cutoff and be like, wow, those bulging muscles are really, really good. Or no one's saying when he's really, really tight jeans, quality A back there. Quality A. Or, wow, look at those calves. I really, really want to make out with them this weekend. And the messages we send, again, are very, very different. So, yeah, I don't think the decision-making is, again, personal opinion, is similar behind them, again, because of your makeup. Your body's very, very different than a male's body.
Mr. Ochino, would you agree that clothing can be a distraction in the classroom?
In a lot of ways, more so with the women than the men, is that I think sometimes the way women dress it could be, I'll say, disruptive for men who have to sit and you know, view women who are scantily dressed. so to speak.
I think we have junior Lena Pappas on the line. Len, what is your reaction to these two comments?
I feel like it's not necessarily that like if guys can't control themselves. It's more of like the girls' choice when they wear that stuff. So it's more of like the girls that are like, I think I'm rocking it. Like I want people to see this, and I feel like people like the reason that we have that rule is so people don't have that mentality, and to try and cut that down to a minimum.
Thanks, Elena. Well, what can we conclude from our conversation today? From what we just heard, we can tell that many people believe and believed, as evidenced by the Fling article from 1968, that the way students dress can be distracting and maybe even dangerous. What is fascinating, though, is how conservative dress is still valued in the school environment by both students and teachers, but the definition of conservative has changed. Today, some students believe that the styles and fashions present at Northern Highlands are appropriate by the modern standards. The goal of fashion has evolved into a form of self-expression and identification. However, even the younger teachers believe that the students have pushed the boundaries of the dress code a bit too far. A few teachers and administrators touched upon the idea that the students' provocative dress, particularly female students, provides a distraction to the learning environment.
Is the dress code therefore in place to control what women can put on their bodies? Even more, Grant Skill, what does this say about how society still views women? The role of women in society has changed over the last 50 years significantly. More women than ever are becoming CEOs of companies and taking leadership in government and science. Yet female bodies have been deemed inappropriate or distracting by a dress code. Perhaps clothing has become an even more prominent symbol of progression and self-expression of a younger generation, especially young females. Additionally, both social media and pop culture reiterate the definition of perfect, which affects self-esteem, how people dress themselves, and how people view and interpret the fashion choices of others. Well, that's all the time we have for today, but the conversation has just begun. Tweet us at Highlands History with the hashtag BoomRoasted, or for your more loquacious listeners, email us at highlandshistory@gmail.com. Until next time, we out.